I'm not sure what award or T-shirt title anybody would be giving on this podcast, but I can assure you it would not be most handsomest podcaster. More on that in a new metric that says the Guardians are most balanced to take advantage of baseball's new rules on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. I'm Jeff. That's Justin. We have a center field debate. We have a new metric, which is everyone's favorite based on our comments, and just some of the general news in camp. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day where you get podcasts. We've got your team covered every day. I'm going to pull this down. You might have noticed I'm changing the background. What I want from fans is, do you want it to be something that's only sports, or do you want to keep it a little more personal with our thoughts? We're kind of taking ideas and then using those also with our discussions with the overall network. So what do you want? Do you want it to just be kind of sports, or do you like, someone commented on the Turtles machine over there? But let us know.
Love the Ninja Turtles. Are you going to watch the new cartoon? Is it a new movie or a new cartoon?
I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest. My daughter and I have played Shredder's Revenge absolutely to death. If you have not played that and you have a kid, I do a lot of the heavy lifting because she's 5, but she loved it. April was a character she could finally play as a girl in a Turtles game because we played the captain over there for a long time. So, but it's just an awesome game. So I'll throw that recommendation out there right now. It's a really fun game in general.
I had an aunt dressed up as a Ninja Turtle for my birthday one time, so I was a huge nerd as a kid. I'm still a huge nerd, but
I was definitely a Ninja Turtle for something like 1st through 3rd grade. So I can't.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't mean to. I wasn't trying to insult you, but I was saying I've always had a face for radio personally. So anybody's watching this podcast on YouTube, I'm so sorry, but I don't know if either of us are winning any titles for most handsomest podcasts anytime soon, but as you know, I don't think anybody about please don't put my face on a t-shirt. Nobody wants that. No, nobody. There's not
same.
Even my fiance doesn't want that. My mom doesn't want. Nobody wants that. But that doesn't mean that the Guardians couldn't have fun at the expense. If you didn't see over the offseason, speaking of metrics, we're going to talk about another metric here. It was, I don't know how they determined that. I think it was voted on, but Tito won the most handsomest manager in baseball. And of course, the Guardians couldn't let that go without being something they did in camp. They weren't just going to let him earn that title and not give him a bunch of crap for it. So they all showed up with a bunch of T-shirts with his face on it, and the title says most handsome manager. I knew, I heard that at Guards Fest. They announced that at Guards Fest, and I was like, yeah, that's not the last we've heard of that. I'm pretty sure someone's going to show up and there's going to be newspapers or printouts attached to his office or on the walls of spring training, and they showed up with a T-shirt. I would wear this T-shirt, though. Would you wear this T-shirt? If you're watching on YouTube, we have the video. We have the screenshot.
I would not, but I do wonder, at the risk of getting myself in trouble, like how much of this comes down to him just being like one of 3 managers everybody knows.
That's fair. Could you name all 30 managers now? Could you?
No.
Could you name all the AL Central managers?
Nope.
Rocco Baldelli in Minnesota.
Yes.
Pedro Grifol in Chicago. Detroit is
it's not Osmus. It's
they have a new manager this year.
Do they? See, I already would have got it wrong.
They have a new manager this year. I can't even do it. And Kansas City is Matt Cattaro, former, obviously, Cleveland coach.
Which I had forgotten Kansas City's as well. That went in one ear, not the other.
Yeah, Detroit's got a new manager, too. And I can't remember who brought it in. I should know off the top of my head. But, okay, so you wouldn't wear that T-shirt? I don't know. I just figured sure nobody ever puts my face on a T-shirt. I don't think anybody wants that. But I'm glad the team had fun at his expense because you knew that was going to come back around, and there was no chance they were just going to let that go without having a little fun with Tito. But that is, I don't know, a great encapsulation of the clubhouse, is it not? Like, they could sit there and make fun of him, and he's good at making fun of himself. And that certainly makes things better. I think that just shows you how close this team is and how they feel about each other.
No, I mean, like I said, it's just the perfect opportunity for them to make fun of him, and in a good-natured way, which is everything in that clubhouse.
Yeah, it was a good way to do it. The T-shirt was really well done. My only suggestion was a newspaper printout or something on the wall. Jeff, team injury. I feel like we're on the other side of things a little bit. So there's some updates. On Guardians are off on Tuesday in camp. They are not playing a game schedule. I think they're playing like a B game. So they got guys playing on backfields and throwing games, whatever like that, but nothing scheduled on the spring training docket. But on Wednesday, Eniel De Los Santos, who had been dealing with a left hamstring strain, he is scheduled to pitch. Cody Morris is going to throw off a mound. They hope this week. We're not sure yet, but they're hoping he will. Nick Sandlin is going to pitch on Wednesday as well. He is scheduled to throw behind Plesac, Karinchak, and Stefan, and actually Sandlin and De Los Santos back-to-back the same day. So that's good news. And George Valera, it was just, I think we mentioned this the other day, just wrist inflammation or wrist discomfort. It was just inflammation after an MRI. He is doing bat handling exercises, whatever. What is it? I don't know what a bat handling exercise is. Like, I guess I'd have to be in.
Sounds like what teenagers do. Buzzing. Let's move on.
All right. Well, that's the end of that. That was all the good news. There's all sorts of things Jeff is getting into this that you don't want to go towards.
But no, I mean, it's like, hey, I just keep waiting for the day since Bo Naylor was my first pick and the first pick in the entire draft. That like we're gonna wake up to the news that like his foot fell off in his sleep or something like that. I'm still waiting for the ultimate, like, or a literal hammer will drop onto him and break his foot. That's what will happen. But
someone's got a voodoo doll of your team everywhere. I think that's what it is. They're just
poking. Right? I mean, we're competing teams, so I would assume. So there you heard it. It's all of these injuries to my Chase DeLauder and Daniel Espino are Justin. He's got the voodoo doll.
Yeah, it's me. I'm just trying to poke little holes in everybody.
Just caring more about.
I care more about my
imaginary
team than I care about.
That we can't really judge than about what's going on. But speaking of things that care and companies that care, our first sponsor of the day are our good friends over at LinkedIn. And listen, LinkedIn, we appreciate them because they came back to us. That's always a nice thing when a company trusts you enough to come back. And if you want the type of help, I can say this. For the past year at my job, we've had the biggest time with hiring. It is hard getting good candidates. It's hard getting people who, you can count on every day. It is a minefield when it comes to hiring staff. And right now, the good people at LinkedIn are here to help you. You want to go to LinkedIn Jobs to help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I might recommend this to my school board. Then add your job and purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. So small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find quality candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedinjobs.com/LockedOnMLB. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnMLB to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
New metrics, everyone's favorite thing. New metrics. You would think, Jeff, that when it comes to new math and new metrics, I would be like last.
Yeah, you brought this up.
I know. I try not to bring up math, and I know not everybody who listens to our show likes metrics, but we're going to keep this pretty simple, and I don't think it's going to be a super hard thing to pick up or understand because that's the new rules. But I didn't do the math on this. Somebody else did the math for me. I can read and figure out things when people do the math for me. It's me having to do the math is where I get in trouble. So blame it on, I'd say blame it on one of my high school teachers, but really it's my fault. Let's be honest here. 538, the metric site. They do a lot of sports, politics, science, all that kind of stuff. This is written by Neil Payne. It is called the Manfred Rank, the winners and losers of baseball's new rules. And what is the Manfred Rank, you might ask? Manfred is
it a measure of stinking and being horrible at your job, completely ineffective?
It could be. I think one could interpret it as efficiency rating.
A little bit, little bit of anger there.
What would you say you do here? Does anybody? I hope people get that reference. What would you say you do here? The Manfred metric is Metric for assessing negative or favorable rule effect dynamics. That was Neil Payne's title. So I think it's a good title. It's interesting because it's all going to be rated back to Rob Manfred. This is going to be part of his legacy. So you might as well. These are, baseball's most dramatic rule changes in my lifetime, except for like interleague play. And this wasn't anywhere near as dramatic. Anyway.
At the time it was. I mean, at the time, I just remember it being like, a biblical event. American League, National League teams will play each other. Cats and dogs living together. Chaos. I just keep throwing movie references.
And now it's now it's everywhere. Now you can't escape it. Now everybody plays everybody. Everybody has a trophy. So what this did is it took 538 runs what's called ELO ratings and how they project wins for the year. So they take Fangraphs, Baseball Prospectus, Clay Davenport, who used to be Baseball Prospectus, and ELO ratings, projections for the Major League season. They kind of put them all into a cocktail sauce together, mix them up, and that's how they get their projection total for the year. And then they took into account the new rules of baseball this year. So the pitch clock, no shifting, sprint speed because of the bases being bigger, and the pickoff rule, encouraging more stolen bases. They took all of those into effect into projections, and they spit out who would be the best team based on these new rules. Any guess, Jeff, who might be the best team in baseball, projected win total based on original projections and the new rules being taken into effect?
The Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, Oakland Athletics. They are a big fat 24th. That's a good one.
I mean, they like athletes. That would have helped them improve.
It is your Cleveland Guardians. The Cleveland Guardians, according to 538's Manfred metric, stand to be the best team in baseball based on these new rule changes. And what that is because the Guardians shifted the least amount in baseball last year. And I can confirm, I looked this up. The Guardians shifted on 1,748, so 1,748 batters last year. That is the least in baseball. They were third quickest team pitching between pitches last year. It took 22 seconds between pitches. That was third fastest in all baseball for their pitchers, and they stole 119 bases. Now this at sprint speed, they were first in sprint speed, it says, but they stole 119 bases, and they stole it at a 81% success rate last year, which was third in all of baseball. They had third most steals in baseball, but the Rangers had the first, but they got thrown out 41 times. Cleveland was 119 for 27. So between their efficiency on the bases, sprint speed, lack of shifting, and lack of relying on the shift last year, and being able to be quick with their tempo on the mound, this new metric says that the Guardians are most poised to take advantage of baseball's new rules. I personally am not surprised. Are you, Jeff?
No. Like, this is a team that ran well. It's a team that, as you mentioned, they didn't shift a ton. As I was trying to think it would help, I was joking about Oakland, but they are a team that is going to benefit. Like, you're looking to the other thing more than anything else.
They're not. This says they're not.
Have them shifting into the red.
It's got them shifting from 29th to 24th. So
I'm saying it shows
spots.
them improving. Like, only half the league is actually improving with the metric. So I'm just saying, like, it does. Like, they are a team that will be better, right? The green is a positive improvement.
Yes, green is positive. So
yes, so it does again because it's what does Cleveland have? What does Oakland have? What do a lot of these teams, the Reds, the Rockies, have? One of those things you go through the Cubs, the D-backs. It's a lot of the Pirates. It's a lot of young teams, right? That's one of those things you see right away. Youth. Some of these new rules are going to favor youth. Which it is in some ways kind of insidious if you think about it, because what is a way to reduce veteran contract cost? By shifting the game to younger players. By changing the rules, it's going to increase runs. It's going to increase scoring. We might talk about that, but it also makes there more value in a guy who's a little bit younger, who is on his first contract, not on his second contract. And when you play, and again, if you're listening at home, sorry that you can't see it. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. Thank you. But basically, when you go through that list, almost every team at the bottom, who are your quote unquote bottom feeders, but are also your youngest teams in baseball. Like the Reds, that literally your bottom 10 teams until you get to the Marlins are all projected better thanks to the new rules, or having gains thanks to the new rules. So these rules definitely favor, younger teams. And what is Cleveland but the youngest team in baseball? And I know the Braves, I think, that's the Brewers. I'm having a hard time reading the list. But the Brewers are another team that have some youth coming up. And then you look at, teams like the Astros that are not built to run, and they're the ones who are going to be a little more hurt. So it is interesting. If you want to go all tinfoil hat conspiracy, this rule change could be actually a way to help suppress salaries. Because if you're going to add additional value to the game, that additional value is not affecting most players entering their second contract.
I did not honestly think of it that way. That's a good way to look at this. I was just looking at it as, hey, this is going to be good for Cleveland.
I'm tinfoil hat guy over here. It's okay. If I took this off, you'd see it's all tinfoil just in here. Got to keep the aliens from reading my brain.
So that makes me the optimist, and that makes you the conspiracy theorist, I think.
I am recording from a basement, so
that's fair. You got your
you are as well, so I don't think
supplies down there. That's what's behind the shelf is all your doomsday supplies. Your canned meat, your batteries, your flashlight,
mostly Christmas supplies, because we go Christmas crazy here. This is 90% Christmas.
So in your post-apocalyptic world, it's going to be Christmas all the time, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it'll be like the one factory Santa. In Wasteland 3. If anyone else is a nerdy video gamer, but without all the terrible bits. But it's if you like that series like me, all the bits are terrible bits. But it's a fun game. But we just realized when the world ends, it's not going to be happy everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Baseball. So yeah, did I explain the metric here pretty well?
Yeah, because the metric's going to be, a lot of it comes from teams that would shifted heavily no longer get that defensive advantage. Like there are going to be more opportunities. Teams that are running more will also get an advantage, because it does certainly feel like it's not quite a free pass to run, but it is very close to a free pass. And all of this more and more, I understand. I don't want to maybe bring up Sean Murphy again, but it does make me a little Murphy sad, just because I think his value is just going to escalate so much. Like the Braves were smart. Let's just put it there. The Braves were incredibly smart, in a very well-run team, very well-run organization. Looking at how we've seen how easy it is to run right now, getting an elite catch and throw catcher who can hit is valuable. And like Bo Naylor might be a plus hitter, but he's never going to be an elite catch and throw guy.
I disagree with that.
You think
I don't know about
the arm is closer to average, is it not?
His pop times last year were sub 2.
Pop times were good, were solid, but he doesn't.
The arm's
have
fine. The arm's fine.
It wasn't like the 70 grade though. It was like the 55-60, right?
Yeah, I'd say about a 60 is right. I think as long as your mechanics are good catching, and I think a 60 grade arm. I don't know if you bake in pop time and mechanics into the arm, because you got
to have all of it.
You can if you don't have like a plus arm like a Sean Murphy arm, if your mechanics are good and your release is good and you're working on it, your efficiency movement, I think you can make up for.
You can, but when you have the guy who literally has all of it. Like he's going to stand.
Oh yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
I think Bo Naylor is going to be fine in that respect. I would be.
No, I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I'm just saying like Murphy is kind of alone on a mountain.
Yeah, well, at least this way, like I said, this is pitch tempo, so the Guardians are careful about how quickly they throw the ball. Obviously, Clase and even with Bakey and Clase and Karinchak being guys who are slow to the plate or slow
to the plate.
Well, but they're slow between.
Yeah. Pitches.
22 seconds last year, but that was still third quickest in baseball last season. So Cleveland should still be in pretty good shape there. So that should help Bo Naylor and Mike Zunino defensively. They didn't shift a lot last year. So which team shifted the least, or relied on the shift least last in 2022? Which teams ran the bases the best in 2022? And all that points to Cleveland. So I'll be excited for that and see what happens there. But let us know what you think of that, and if we explain the metrics well, because I know there are people here who don't love the metrics too much, and this isn't anything that's going to be tracked. It's just someone came up with a way to put this into a formula, and thank goodness they did, because it's interesting, and I was not going to do the math personally, but I don't know. It's a good link. It's a good article. Maybe I'll put the link to the article in the podcast description for tomorrow.
Totally. We are going to come back and discuss even more center field, since everyone and their mother is unhappy with our takes on center field. My mother even called to complain today, but that'll be in a minute on today's episode of Locked On Guardians. So people, listen, I understand Myles Straw was not good last year. Like, let's be honest. He was terrible last year. Still better than Austin Hedges. And I bring this up because this team puts specific defensive values at very specific positions. There are places that they want elite defense, and they will punt everything else. That's why Austin Hedges, who was literally the worst hitter in baseball over the last 3 years, had a near everyday gig in Cleveland. They went out of their way to acquire Myles Straw. They immediately locked up Myles Straw. He is the elite of the elite defensively. Brennan can be a fine defender, but when we're talking, foreshadowing, when I was talking about Murphy being king of the hill, and then Naylor can be solid, but it's still a sizable difference between those two guys. That's what it is with Brennan and Shaw. Like, very similar debate here. And I bring this up because what Straw does with his glove, his WAR, I believe Fangraph's WAR was almost equal to Ahmed's last year, even with his terrible performance, because his defensive value is so high that it makes him a even with that year he had, an above average performer. And center field is a hard position to nail down. And how many great outfield prospects have we seen come up and die like a dog in the big leagues? It's also not the easiest transition. And anyone assuming that anyone is going to step up and just be fine from the start is a bit of a fool's errand. Stephen Kwan maybe gave us an Oscar Gonzalez a little too much hope, a little too much. We've kind of forgotten like Oscar Mercado, who was fourth on this team in outfield plate appearances a year ago. Bradley Zimmer, who started the year at the team, Jackson Frazier and his ups and downs. We can say that Brennan's a different animal, and you and I both have him in the top 10, but Straw is an elite defender signed to a long-term contract who is a big part of that clubhouse leadership group. They didn't bring him in here to ride the bench. And yeah.
I mean, I think it would take, like I said, I've said it before on here, I think it would take quite a bit of a slump for him. Like last year they weren't going to do it because they weren't going to bring anybody up to replace him at that point. They weren't going to bring up Will Brennan in the middle of the season, other guys, but now you do have other options you could put out there if he did slump. But I think it would take the same kind of slump he had last year all year. And I just don't think he's that bad of a hitter. And if you look at a lot of his rate stats from last year, you're talking about how hard he hit the ball. Like everything he did last year was in line with what he did in 21.
For a guy with speed, he had a terrible BABIP. He was really unlucky.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't hit any more fly balls. He didn't hit any more pop-ups. He didn't hit more ground. I mean, he did hit more ground balls than he did a year ago, but you could say the ground balls probably are better for a guy like that. And the contact rate is still really good. So he's not swinging and chasing more than he ever did before. Nothing has changed in his batted ball profile to suggest that what he did in 2021 isn't repeatable. Now, do I think he is going to repeat what he did in 2021? I don't know. That's a 97 weighted runs created plus. He had 271 with 350 on base. I don't think.
That was high water marks.
He finished the year at a 64. So let's split the difference and say he is somewhere in the low 80s. If Myles Straw is in the low 80s, like let's say 84, just for good measure, I don't know, 85.
Like a 3.5 win player.
Yeah, it's a 3.5 win player. You're getting value in defense. If he's getting on base more, look, he finished the season with a 291 on base. That was almost 100 points lower. It's he was a 349. It's 60 points lower than it was in 2021. If Myles Straw can get on base, like, I don't know, 32% of the time, let's say a 320 on base, which is what he's projected for, by the way, is about 320, mid 320s. You're talking about a guy who's going to steal probably 35 bags based on the new rules. He stole 21 bases a year ago with a 291 on base. That's got to improve. We can address that's got to improve. But
sprint speed 96th percentile a year ago.
Right. If he gets on base third at a 320 clip, he is going to steal 35 to 40 bases, and that's going to be great. The bottom of your order.
Hole.
From the 9 hole. And that's the other great point here. He started out last season as your leadoff hitter, and he was hot in April. He was one of the best hitters.
Him and Ahmed flipped because Ahmed was terrible. It was an interesting flop.
I think Myles Straw is a good fit for the 9 hole. Is he going to be a good hitter? Look, no, I don't think Myles Straw is ever going to be a guy you're like, oh, that guy's a really good hitter. I think he's going to be an okay hitter. He provides great defense in center field. He is going to run the base as well. He's going to steal 35 to 40 bases if he's healthy all year. Like you said, the contract. I think I love Will Brennan. I've said time and time again. You just said that he's in both of our top 10s. And I've said time and time again. I told Andre when he came on that I am higher on Will Brennan than anybody, not with the last name Brennan. I think you can still find plenty of playing time for both of those guys to benefit you. And that still includes Myles Straw getting a lot of time because he is a great defender. And he's not going to be as bad as he was a year ago. I feel comfortable saying that. If we're sitting here on October 6th doing the show, or October 7th, and he has a weighted runs created plus 64, I will admit that I was 100% wrong and he's terrible. But I think he'll get into the 80s again. So that's why we're saying the defense and speed, he'll improve over last year. That's not to say Brennan can't be a better hitter. We both know Brennan's a better hitter. But I think you can benefit from having Brennan in the lineup and Straw, and it's good to have both of them in there.
And we have heard some concerns talking to some people about Brennan and some platoon splits. I don't know how much to buy into that. It's a very limited sample size that people are getting into.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to point out with Straw too is like Zips projects him at an 85 runs created plus. I do want to point out last year he had a 261 BAPIP. Now league average BAPIP is 285. So it's 24 points below average. A fast player typically has a BAPIP over 300. Even with last year added in, which was, the second most played appearances of his career, it's literally half of his, not literally, it's closer to like 40% of his total major league data. His career BAPIP is 301. The year before he had a 336. So you're talking about a 70-point shift. If those two just kind of balance out a little bit more and he's at 300, which is what his career average is, again, with two extremes, 40 points more to last year's on base percentage puts him at a 330. If he's got a 330 on base and he's stealing 35 to 40 bases, you don't care about the power because he's also the best. Not only like he is a weird defender, and I say that in the best possible way because oftentimes center fielders aren't known for their arm, and he's got a great arm for a center fielder, like an unusually strong arm for a center fielder. And that's what it comes down to. Like you and I both had Will Brennan getting 400, 500 plate appearances this year. There's enough. Right. We're not saying like glue Brennan to the bench. You and I both have him being a very active part of this team. Because again, like, I don't know, like I said, I think Josh Naylor, we all agree, lefties were not his friend a year ago. And that often does not change. There are very few guys who seem to figure out the lefties later on. It's just one of those things we don't see often. So we places for Brennan. And if you just say, well, Brennan's in center field, you might make this team worse because then you're taking like, okay, so who is put, I guess you're relying on Gabby Arias, and Gabby's look great. And there's reasons for hope with him also in that. But I think there's a way where you can get all of these guys some playing time, get everyone a little more rested throughout the year. Also, someone's going to get hurt. Right. Like that is inevitable. This lineup is not going to stay healthy. No lineup does. And then the other thing is don't compare anyone to Steve Kwan. Steve Kwan is a unicorn. Last year Fangraphs put an 80 on his hit tool. That would make him like I don't know if I'd ever put an 80 on a hit tool, but like he is a unicorn. He is special. He does things completely like Tony Gwynn is the 80 hit tool. We're not
there. Speaking of stats real quick, I'm going to do the interrupting so you can
go ahead.
Put my bingo card together. I'll bring it up on the next podcast. Someone sent this to me. Steve Kwan with like a big behind in counts had like the best batting average last year of anybody, or best batting average of all time besides like Tony Gwynn. Oh, just a random stat there. So there you go.
He's special. Don't put anyone in that comp. It's unfair. It just the one thing, and we talked about this with Andre, go back and listen. And I know someone asked, you glossed over the Oscar Gonzalez hype train stuff. That was also in our in our Andre Knott interview. So you can go back and listen to that. But the one thing we talked about is like, this team is very good at finding unicorns. And Stephen Kwan, he sometimes doesn't get thought of it because he's not big. He's not physical. There's all these other things, but he is a unicorn with what he does. Like he is 100% one of a kind. I mean, we all are precious little snowflakes that are different in our own little way. But Stephen Kwan is a baseball unicorn. There's not guys like him with that approach, that ability to hit, that ability to like take things apart. He's a very good chess player, and it's like he takes all of those chess skills and applies them right into the baseball game. And yeah, I think they are also this team has shown in the past a tendency to be like, oh, that guy plays that position really well. Let's not mess with it. So Kwan is probably in left field no matter what. And that does, limit Brennan a little bit, because I do think there are some people who think left field might be his best home at points. I think he'd be fine in center or right. But bottom line, Brennan should get 400 at bats this year, plate appearances this year, pretty easy. And the other thing I did want to point out that I forgot about earlier is because Straw is such a great defender, the one thing is you're not going to pinch hit for him late in games unless it's like the 9th or so inning. So he's not going to get lifted as much late. But, if your 9-hitter is the best defensive center fielder in baseball, didn't he lead the American League in batters thrown out last year?
I'm not sure. I have to look that up.
I thought he was high on that list. Outfield assist. I cannot think of the word.
Yeah.
But who steals 30 plus bases and gets on base at a 325 clip, you're winning a lot of games.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have other parts of your lineup.
Yeah.
Carry that. And I think the addition of Josh Bell and hopefully Mike Zunino, last year with Straw and Hedges 8-9, oftentimes that was a 2 automatic outs the way he was playing. I think, again, we think that Straw will be better this year. Most people think Straw will be better this year. We're not saying he's a great hitter. And you're right. It's not Straw versus Brennan. It is Straw with Brennan. It is how can Tito best manage, put those guys together, because they can both help this team win. I don't think it's it's Straw or Brennan. It's how do you make them both work for you in the best of their abilities. And I think they'll find a way to do it because they're both good players. All right. Yeah. So Jeff, any final thoughts? I've got one final thought for you. You got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that Straw was less effective this year, even though his K percentage went down.
Right.
So maybe he needs to go down. Yeah, maybe he needs to be a little less selective.
That's probably what it is. I don't know.
That's really the only big change I could see going through his numbers.
Yeah, Jeff.
No.
The next time we talk, Cuba versus the Netherlands. Richie Palacios playing for the Team Netherlands. 11 o'clock on Tuesday, March 7th. We'll be just finishing up the podcast. Will you be watching the World Baseball Classic?
I'll be continuing to watch Letterkenny reruns. That's been my go-to of late. That's what I'm going to watch. We will be doing post-production on the podcast at this time on Tuesday night, and that will be Cuba and Netherlands. I will be watching, and I will tell you all my thoughts, because everybody on this channel loves the World Baseball Classic as much as I do, obviously. Go Guardians, go.